So let's talk about free will and the law of control. The dictionary defines free will as the power of making free choices that are unconstrained by external circumstances or by an agency such as fate or divine will. That's from dictionary.com. We all pretty much know what free will is. Do what you want, when you want, if you want, kind of a thing. It means we can just choose our actions, and that's free will. There's another aspect of this that you may or may not be familiar with. Not everybody believes that we have free will. Maybe you've heard of that before. There is a philosophy called Determinism that basically rejects free will. Determinism can get pretty deep in more ways than one, and it basically says that everything that is there because it was essentially preordained, predestined. Everything, humans cannot be causal agents. We cannot cause anything. The way we are was predetermined already by the universe or whatever. The universe was predetermined. Everything we do was predetermined. Our personality, our behavior, and if you start thinking about that a little bit, you start seeing some moral implications in that. Determinism is, and I'll hit more on this, but determinism is almost like a religion. It takes faith to believe in, and there's tons of moral implications, and that's what I want to go over. These are some of my own moral and ethical problems with determinism, and I'm not alone in my feelings on these. These are not all there are, but these are just a few handful that I'm going to talk about tonight. And it all bears on free will. Do we really have it or not? Well, if you're a determinist, the answer is no. We don't have free will. And essentially, where do you find these determinists? That's a good question, isn't it? You find them a lot in the scientific community. Perhaps you've heard of dualism, idealism, and materialism. Those are different philosophies as well, and they're all metaphysical in nature. Dualism, you're probably very familiar with. We have a dual nature about us. We are physical and spiritual. That's dualism, really. Idealism basically idealists believe that none of this is real. It's all fabricated by our consciousness. That's idealism. Materialism basically posits that this is all we get. There is nothing beyond what you see right here and now. There is no paranormal. There is no life after death. There is nothing supernatural. There's no, what you see is what you get. When you die, you're dead. That's it. And materialism is believed in a lot by the scientific community, especially those in scientism. And scientism is simply devout scientists, I guess, is good a word for anything, because it's pretty much a religion too, if you ask me. So not everybody, not all scientists believe this, but a lot of them do, and it's kind of the going thing, and maybe we're getting out of that a little bit now, but materialists are determinists. That's it. What you see is what you get. Everything's here because it was predetermined, and so there's some problems with that. Let's get into the first one. Determinism, these are my moral issues with determinism. Determinism invalidates self-responsibility or personal responsibility. It teaches that people do what they do because of natural laws and are incapable of doing anything different. Think about that for a minute. Basically says that you are the way you are, predetermined, and you can't change. If you're a serial killer, that was predetermined too. And and they go on that we need to get rid of the prisons and have hospitals because these people who do this stuff, who murder other people, well, they can't help it. They can't help it. It was predetermined. And so we need to help them get healthy. But then that seems to counteract the very philosophy of determinism, because if it's all preordained, then how can you change? Well, then they'll say, well, that part was preordained too. So you can see that it's beginning to fall apart already. So, you know, if you're a murderer, like Hitler, for example, it was preordained. He is what he was, and that was the thing. So he doesn't have to be accountable, does he? Here's a second one. Determinism invalidates the individual and relegates humanity to subhuman animals, essentially, because we can't think for ourselves, right? We can't change. Determinism is detrimental to self-esteem because it places human beings on the same level as any other animal or object, inanimate object for that matter. It denies the unique power of the human spirit to rise above adversity and obstacles. And yet we see that all the time, don't we? People rise above that stuff. But of course, that could be predetermined too. One hard determinist, as I call them, by the name of Gordon M. Orloff, in his book, whatever, by the name of Where's the Free Will? An Exploration of this Elusive Concept. He writes, I call one who believes in free will a meist. A meist. For this view is about the triumph of me over all causes. You know, so basically he's now starting to put you down. You can't have a healthy self-esteem. You can't focus on you. It's not about you, you know. And I think he's, and I haven't read the context of this, but you know, it sounds like he's saying, you know, going to the narcissistic. Everybody's a narcissist if you believe in free will. Well, no, that's not true. He has no idea just how much he revealed about his own mental health in that short derogatory sentence. He obviously has deep self-esteem issues to the point where he is projecting his own self-denigration onto others by implying that it's somehow improper to value oneself or triumph over other causes like adversity. You know, he's found a philosophy that feeds and sustains his own sense of self-worth. So as a determinist, he's basically saying, oh, you're just focused on you. It's all about you. Well, you know, honestly, it's all about me, and it's all about you, and it's all about us. And we have to take care of ourselves, otherwise we don't survive. You see that even in the animal kingdom, do you not? Everybody has to, and humans are probably the one big group who doesn't follow that. They're, you know, in a lot of ways, there's many people who are dysfunctional or unhealthy in that. They want to help other people to their own detriment. That's called codependence. You know, I'll shoulder the problems of the world to my own detriment. I'll suffer, you don't have to. That's not healthy. Nobody has to suffer if we don't want to. If humans are nothing more than the product of a universal machine, as determinists believe, then there's nothing unique about us at all. We're simply one more cog of the machine, and yet we inherently know that humanity is unique and special among all known life forms. Doesn't mean that it's all about us again, but we are a special life form, just like any life form is. Special in our own right, right? Any sentient, sapient life form, alien, whatever, is unique. And it's relevant, and it's special in its own right, just like each one of us are special in our own right. We talked about perfection. We're perfect. Nobody can be more perfect at being us than we are. So that's the second one. It invalidates the individual. It puts us down. Don't like it. Number three, the third problem I have with it, determinism denies that humans are causal agents. To say that humans cannot create or cause an action is frankly preposterous. It's ridiculous, and yet that's what determinists say. You know, it's pretty offensive to any thinking person that we can't cause things to happen. You know, right now I am speaking from a podium to a group of people here and abroad. You know, I think I chose to do that. And you chose to be here, right? Could have been somewhere else. Of course, they would say that this was all preordained too. You know, it's discussing some of this stuff with a determinist is almost like you know, a religionist trying to convince an atheist that there's a God. It just ain't going to happen, you know, and vice versa. Ain't going to happen. Another interesting, related to this, determinist belief that everything in the inanimate universe is caused by some other inanimate thing. Everything we do is caused by inanimate things rather than thoughts. When saying that, it violates their own thinking. It violates the law of causation, because the human mind is capable of meaningful causation. We all know that. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I want you to understand that there are philosophies out there that are every bit as messed up as any of the religious philosophies, and they're included too. Here's a fourth point. Determinism is fatalistic, because it not only removes hope of making this life any better, it also removes hope of life after death. You know, without proof. It's just, well, I don't think free will exists. Really? Well, what's your proof? I just don't think it exists. Okay, what's your proof? Just don't think it exists. And that's about where we're at with determinism, and yet people buy into this stuff. And I'm still trying to figure out who makes this stuff up, who comes up with this stuff. But it's out there. If you want to look into determinism, look it up online. Go to Wikipedia. It'll tell you all about it. There's just too much compelling evidence for life after death to ignore. It's just like the people who don't believe in spirits, don't believe in UFOs or aliens. Oh, no, that stuff's just, that's a bunch of nut jobs that believe in that stuff. Don't you know that? Right. There's too much compelling evidence to ignore it by credible witnesses. We can't just ignore that. No open-minded scientists or metaphysician who is looking for the truth, looking for answers, can ignore it in good conscience. They can't. And so the people who just naysay this stuff, put it down, they're showing who they are. They're showing their own narrow-minded belief system. They're not thinking. And I'm not saying you got to believe in everything that comes down the pike. We have to think for ourselves, don't we? We have to test it out. What are the facts, and what do those facts tell us? And we keep asking that question until we figure out some answers. So let's talk about the practical nature of free will. So I've explained at this point what determinism is. It's kind of complicated, and you don't probably want to understand it anyway. Who does? But it's out there. Let's talk about the practical nature of free will. For anything to be useful or practical, it's got to be grounded and meaningful. That's something that I preach about all the time. This also applies to free will. The determinists will say, well, you can't do anything you want. Well, I can. Well, you can't go jump off a building and fly like a bird, can you? Not without the proper equipment. So they're saying, well, then free will doesn't exist. Now we're getting into the realm of silliness and ridiculousness. All right, here's the way we look at free will. You go to a restaurant. You arrive at your table, and what do they put in front of you? A menu. So you can order your dinner, right? Well, if you're in a Chinese restaurant and you want barbecue, it might be a problem, right? Because it's not on the menu. So if I want to go and jump off a building and flap my arms and fly, it's not going to work. Why? It's not on the menu. Not built for that. A bird, on the other hand, can, right? So we don't want to get ridiculous with this stuff. Basically, we can do anything we want unless there's some physical, policy, legal reason why we can't. Moral reason why we can't. Right? If it's on the menu, we can do it. Now, the problem is a lot of people don't think that it's on the menu, but it is. You ever talk to somebody, well, you know, have you ever thought about doing this? Oh, I couldn't do that. Well, have you ever thought about doing this? No, I'm not smart enough. You ever thought about doing that? No, I'm not educated enough. Well, it's on the menu. They're not seeing it. So, the card that we pulled tonight, blocks. Wild card number 3. Blocks. Think about that. Look at the menu of your options in life. You have free will. You can do about anything you want, provided it's on the menu. And there's a lot on that menu. Make sure you read the menu. And don't write yourself off. Because that's essentially what people will do. I can't do that. I don't want to hear all the reasons why you can't. I want to hear all the reasons why you can. That's better, isn't it? You know, don't tell me I can't do anything. That gets me going. So now you know how to get me going. Tell him he can't do it. So don't be foolish with this whole thing. Make sure you read the menu. Now, how does this all come back to the law of control? We talked about free will, determinism, free will, and the law of control. We've got to factor that in because that's what it's all about. The law of control is simple. It simply states you cannot control or change other people. Stop trying. Who can we control? Ourselves, right. So, when it comes to free will, we control what we can and let go of the rest. It's not a hard concept, and yet many people will continue to try to control others even when they've been told this. So right now, in your relationships especially, if you are trying to control the other person or change them into something you would like better, stop it. Really. You're trying to control something that you cannot control or change. It will never work. Oh, the other person might change for a time, but then there will be resentment. The other person won't feel comfortable being who they are. Boils down to this, folks. Accept people for who they are. If you cannot accept somebody for who they are, then don't be in a relationship with them. Nobody said you had to. Remember free will? You have the free will, the moral right of free will, to choose who you want to be in relationships with. And it can be any kind of relationship, whether it's a work relationship, an employment relationship, an intimate relationship, a friendship. You can choose. If you're in a relationship that's not going anywhere, that's not good energy or not uplifting or it's dragging you down, whatever, you can not be in that relationship. The way to decide, two most important relationship questions. First question, what do I add or subtract from this relationship? Make your list, pros and cons, make your list. Second question, what does the other person add or subtract from this relationship? Make your list, pros and cons. You can even tally them up if you want, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, each item. Tally them up. Anytime somebody is not willing to change, if you got a problem with somebody and they're doing something in a relationship that's not good, anytime they don't want to change, the relationship's over. You can leave that relationship. Just because it's family does not matter. Anytime somebody takes more than they give and they're unwilling to change, the relationship is over. Let it die. Period. So what? That's the next question. So what? We talked about all this stuff now. So what? Free will and control, healthy control now, are beautiful aspects of life. What are we doing with them? We got to take care of ourselves first, and then we can help other people. We have to manage our day-to-day lives. We have to manage our free will, manage our control. So, what are we doing to do that, to manage our own lives, to manage our own self-control or our own control, our own free will? Are we blocking ourselves? That's the first question to ask. How can we become even freer in life? And then once we've answered that, now what are we doing to add to the woodpile? How are we part of the solution rather than the problem? We have the free will to live our lives as we see fit, provided it's on the menu, right? If we choose to include or not include certain individuals in our life, that's up to us. It's our choice, and we're entitled to that choice by nature of free will. So, I hope that some of these points have resonated with those of you here and out there. Some situation, maybe it's a relationship that's blocking you. And it could be any kind of relationship, anything, as I mentioned. Think about what that is and think about how you can have more respect for your own free will. Read the menu, go out and happen to life. Don't let life happen to you.